Chapter 6 37 Hours Until Impact. John, Justin and Abigail were back in the office building next to the ship landing pad. The room now felt even more cramped than it was in the first meeting. John stood up from his seat. Hello everyone. As you are all aware, Justin and I have enlisted the help of one of our senior engineers here, Abigail. She has put forth a solution to our problem. She highlighted the potential of the abandoned Bronto on the outskirts of the base as a method of getting everyone home. We are not fully certain of the condition it is in. However, considering its location and the time it has spent there, we are almost certain it has suffered decay of some sort. Fortunately, we believe it could still be operable, with some repairs of course. I would like to hear your opinions on this idea, John said. I think this idea sounds sensible. It's certainly the best we've got so far, Min, John's co-overseer, replied. I think this idea has some very good potential. However, I'd like to discuss my previous idea in more detail. I was thinking about it, and perhaps it would be possible to build 4 large oxygen scrubbers for the Ankylos in time to get off the planet, suggested one council member. Justin remembered him from one of the previous meetings. That was Adam, and he was quite an active participant last time. Thank you for your input, Adam. I am by no means an engineer, but air filtration systems, especially ones that are big enough to filter a space as large as the cargo bay of an Ankylo, are rather complex machines. The amount of people who would be able to work on the air filters would be limited, as there are only a handful of workers on the planet who are able to build and design such devices. Not only that, but we would have to build 4 of them. Although your idea has some potential, repairing a ship that many of our technical workers already have a good understanding of is a far safer strategy in my opinion, especially considering that the Bronto's cargo bay already comes equipped with oxygen scrubbers. Unfortunately, I think it is far too risky in comparison to our alternative, John replied. Adam seemed to understand John's opinion of his idea and where John was coming from. Justin was siding with the Bronto idea. Although modifying the Ankylo seems simpler and more reliable on the surface, fixing up a huge old ship would actually be far safer, because it would be a more familiar process to the workers. There would also be a higher quantity of workers who would be able to help out with repairing the ship, speeding up the process. The odds of getting the air filters finished in time were rather grim. Well then, does anything they would like to say or suggest? John asked. No one responded. Very well then. Should we vote on the 2 ideas? John asked. Everyone agreed to vote now. All in favour of air filters on the Ankylos, raise your hand now, John asked. No one in the room raised their hands. All in favour of repairing the Bronto, raise your hand, John asked. The entire room raised their hands. It seemed at this point the Bronto was truly their one and only hope. Well then, that settles the decision. Justin, Abigail and I will go and inspect the ship to see what kind of condition it is in. After, it will be time to tell everyone on Solfilius about the CME. Excellent job today all. Good luck out there, John finished with. After John had finished speaking, everyone got up out of their seats and made their way out of the cramped office to attend to whatever matters they had to. John, Justin and Abigail got inside of their car. John was once again driving. He took off in the direction of the abandoned Bronto. How good of a condition do you think this thing will be in, John? Justin asked John. Abigail interrupted. The ship will have sustained substantial corrosion and weathering damage, but we should be able to repair it in the time we have left, she spoke. Oh, thank you, Abigail, Justin responded. Justin noticed for a while now that Abigail had very distinctive and repetitive mannerisms. She would often fidget with her hands in specific ways, and she would rock back and forth when speaking. He figured a lot of people would find it annoying or awkward, but he didn't mind. It's what made her her, he guessed. Justin had a hunch about Abigail. He suspected she might have autism. He didn't want to ask, as he didn't want to seem rude. A few things gave him this idea. Her repetitive movements, her hyperfixation on engineering, her unique tone of voice, and her sensitivity to the environment around her. Once more, their car zipped down the ramp into the ravine. The 3 drills were inside again. Abigail pointed out the window at a point in the ravine out in the distance. We are going to be building the new drill there, Justin. Our scanners indicate high concentrations of staminite in that part of the ravine, Abigail informed Justin, excitedly. That's interesting, Justin replied. Abigail seemed rather satisfied with this response. The drills were even uglier up close, Justin thought. However, he knew they were fascinating pieces of machinery that had a very important job. Building a fourth drill would be no easy task, but it would provide a much needed boost to staminite production upon completion. Before long, the car was on the other side of the ravine. John, Justin and Abigail shot up the ramp and back onto the rough sand once more. "We are going off-road in a minute or so. Things might get a little bumpy," John informed Justin and Abigail. "Thank you for letting me know, John," Abigail replied. John began to turn to the left, veering off the road. The car began to shake and bounce around a bit. Abigail looked uncomfortable. "We'll be there soon, don't worry," Justin said to Abigail, attempting to settle her. "Yes, I know," she responded with. Justin was a little taken aback by this reply, as it felt a little rude. Justin figured it was just because Abigail was overstimulated, however. After being on the bumpy road for a short period of time, the car began to descend into a shallow valley on the outskirts of the base. Within the valley was the abandoned Bronto. The 7. 36 hours until impact. Bronto looked mostly intact from this distance, with the exception of a few stray bits and pieces that had fallen off. It was caked in a thick layer of dust. It had been sitting here for a while now, and was left to rot. John pulled up next to the ship. The Bronto's 4 gigantic boosters towered over their car. The ship was truly a sight to behold. Everyone in the car put on their respirators and got out to inspect it. "There are a few large rust patches here and there, but no signs of significant exterior corrosion," stated Abigail while inspecting the ship. The trio walked around to the side of the ship. "The VTOL thrusters on this side look like they need some work, and maybe need a part or two replaced. But apart from that, they are in good condition," Abigail said. The ship's cargo bulkhead was wide open. Justin, John and Abigail all walked inside. The bulkhead entryway was huge. The doorway extended upward nearly 30 meters and was equally wide. The inside of the ship was tarnished, some segments more than others. The ship was filled with dust and sand from the planet that had mostly accumulated into a single corner because of the awkward angle the ship was at. Some sections of the ship were rather dark inside, as the light from the open bulkhead did not reach them. This ship is capable of monitoring all its systems digitally from the bridge. If we can get the power up and running in the ship again, we should be able to run a scan of the ship to figure out what needs to be replaced and what needs to be repaired, stated Abigail. The fusion reactor in the ship might still have fuel in it. "I will go and take a look at it," John suggested. John began to walk into the dark. He turned on the light on his phone so he could see better. He walked up a set of stairs along the side of the ship and up onto an elevated platform that wrapped its way around the whole cargo compartment. He then walked through a door on the back wall of the ship, which led into the reactor room. "Come with me to the control room, Justin," Abigail asked. Justin obliged and followed Abigail into the darkness. She got out her phone and turned on the light. It was easy to see all the dust in the air with the light on like this. Even with the light, Justin couldn't see his surroundings very well. It was pitch black. Abigail and Justin eventually made their way over to the front wall of the ship, where they came across a set of double doors. Justin attempted to open one of the doors. It was locked. Justin tried the other and had the same problem. "Hey Abigail, stand back for me, would you?" Justin asked. "Why? What are you going to do?" Abigail asked in response. Justin took a couple of good steps back before charging forward, slamming his foot straight into the door right next to the handle. The lock made a sharp snapping sound as it broke, causing the door to fly right open. Abigail flinched, screwing up her face and clenching her fists at the sound. Abigail and Justin proceeded to walk through the doorway and into the ship's bridge. The bridge was large. Various control panels were situated around the center of the room. The most striking feature about the bridge was the huge multi-meter tall front window. It was composed of multiple panels, each a few meters long and a few meters wide. Justin imagined it would provide a great view of space, for both a practical navigation purpose and an aesthetic purpose too. "Justin, please help me find the button to turn on the ship," Abigail asked Justin. "Sure thing," Justin replied. Justin began to look around the room. He eyed off the large console at the very front of the ship, which looked promising. Justin walked up to it. The top of the console read Primary Control Panel. Obviously, this had to be it. The console had a few switches, buttons, and a screen in the center, most likely for displaying important information about the ship while in flight. There was a green button with the words Power On written just underneath it. "Hey Abigail, I think I found it," Justin said. Abigail walked over to Justin and the control panel. Abigail took a glance. I believe this is... I'm going to call John. Justin said to Abigail. John pulled out his phone from his pocket. He opened an application run by the NFMC. The program provided all sorts of information to workers or contractors on Solfilius, or those that worked at the Solfilius Orbital Gateway. The program contained the contact information of John. Justin found his phone number and called him. Hey John, it's me, Justin. Abigail and I are on the bridge right now, and we've figured out how to turn the ship on. How are you going with the power? Justin asked. Hello, Justin. I believe everything is set up and ready to go. I just have to reset the primary circuit breaker and then press the button to start the reactor, John replied. Justin heard a click over the phone, presumably from John flipping a switch. After a few seconds, Justin heard the sound of a button being pressed. After that, Justin could hear the sound of the fusion reactor roaring to life. Sounds like everything is set, John, Justin said through the phone. I believe so, John replied. Justin hit the power on button on the console. The lights came on in the bridge, as well as in the cargo room. All the systems then powered up, and the console screens came to life. The screen for the primary control panel came on too, displaying the NFMC logo for a few seconds, before then displaying a home screen. The screen had a model of the ship on it. On the sides of the screen were a few menus. After a bit of searching through these menus, Justin came across the button to run a full diagnostic scan of the ship. He pressed it. A loading bar came up on the screen as the model of the ship began to flicker and flash in different locations, indicating what was being scanned by the computer. After around a minute, the console returned with a large list of different ship faults. There were a variety of issues with the boosters, the hull, the VTOL thrusters, and a variety of other different ship systems. Abigail was watching the screen with great intent. There is about as much damage as I expected. That is good. Well, the damage isn't good, but we should be able to get it in working order before the CME hits, stated Abigail. Justin liked Abigail's awkwardness. He, for whatever reason, found it charming. He knew that some people probably found it annoying, or it made them uncomfortable, but for whatever reason, not him. He liked it. Suddenly, John walked through the doors and into the bridge, startling Justin and Abigail. Oh, hey John, we just finished the scan. We've got a lot of work to do, but it's doable, Justin said to John. I am very glad to hear that. I think our work here is done for now. My apologies for frightening you upon my entrance into the bridge. I should have warned you I was coming in, John replied, picking up that he just startled Justin and Abigail. Now then, I think it is time to inform all the workers at the base about the CME. The ship hangar will be a good place to gather everyone for a full debrief. It is large, undercover, and well lit, John suggested. Justin was relieved. Their solution to getting off of the planet had a high chance of success. Everyone wasn't out of the woods yet, however. They still had a long journey ahead of repairs before they could take off. John, Justin, and Abigail all exited the ship. Coronis was setting when they got outside. Evening was the only time of day Justin liked here. Near the horizon glistened a spectacular orange, fading into blues and purples as the beams of radiation from Coronis shone through the atmosphere. This time of day was far more pleasant than the usual blistering heat or sharp cold. Justin was exhausted after today. He couldn't recall a time in his life he had ever been under such a level of stress. He wished that he could sit down and rest for a while, but he knew he had a long night ahead of him. Everyone would be getting to work on the ship as soon as possible, including him. No one was sleeping tonight. They couldn't afford to. Justin got in the car with John and Abigail. Justin enjoyed the car ride. It gave him some time to sit and rest for a little bit. Along the way, John made a broadcast on his phone. Attention, all workers currently on Solfilius. You are to report to the ship hangar as soon as possible for an urgent emergency meeting, John ordered. Soon enough, everyone in the base would be there. Chapter 8. 35 hours until impact. As the trio arrived at the hangar, Coronis had just dipped below the horizon. The planet was starting to really cool off now, and soon enough the harsh, cold touch of the night air would set in. Upon the tarmac, Justin could already see a vast array of cars parked on the landing pad just outside of the hangar. It had not taken very long for people to get here. The announcement was only given 10 minutes ago. More were still on their way, too. John parked the car in a spot next to all the other cars, where they could drive away easily and not get stuck when they needed to leave. Justin, Abigail, and John all got out and started to walk into the hangar. The hangar was a giant enclosed steel structure. It was coated in even more dust than the construction and fabrication warehouse. The coming and going of spacecraft kicked up a lot of debris and had coated the exterior of the building. As they entered through the large airlock with a few other workers and walked through the crowd, they got a few looks and stares. Justin looked out into the sea of people. Many were talking to each other. Others were just standing there, waiting. It was obvious they were anticipating John was going to address them all soon. Justin looked over at Abigail. She looked extremely anxious. "Are you okay?" Justin whispered. Abigail shook her head in response. Her distinctive fidgeting and hand movements were far more rapid and intense than usual. She was clearly very stressed out. Justin quickly figured out that it was the amount of people here and the noise. It was clearly overwhelming her. "It's okay, Abigail. We'll be out of here as soon as John is finished," Justin said to Abigail. "I hope so. My autism makes these sorts of environments very difficult to be in," she responded. Justin had guessed correctly. Abigail was, in fact, autistic. Justin found satisfaction in this. Although Abigail didn't verbally communicate it, Justin had a feeling that his attempt to relax Abigail had helped a little. The scrunched up expression on her face had loosened, and her hand fidgeting had slowed down. The trio had walked all the way to the back of the hangar. John was staring at a scissor lift that was placed along the back of the wall. The scissor lifts here were normally used to repair and maintain spacecraft. John walked over to it. He climbed up and into its tray. He then drove it over to the crowd and faced it in the direction of them. He extended it upward slightly so he could address the whole crowd and get the best view of everyone possible. John waited in the scissor lift for more people to turn up. Slowly, the hangar filled up with more and more people until eventually the whole hangar was crammed full. By this time, everyone had arrived. It was time for the speech. There was a lot of noise coming from the crowd. Lots of people were talking, most likely discussing what all of this was about. Justin and Abigail were still on the ground with everyone else. They were standing together next to the scissor lift John was in. "Attention everyone!" John yelled into the crowd. John could speak very loudly when he needed to. Justin was impressed, considering he didn't have a microphone. The conversation in the hangar stopped. It was eerily quiet, much quieter than what would be expected from a room with 10,000 people crammed inside. "You may all be wondering why I have gathered you together this evening," John began, his voice loud and clear for all to hear. "We have a dire emergency on our hands. There is a coronal mass ejection headed for this planet. We have 1 day, 2 nights, and an extra 2 hours in the morning before it hits," John stated to the crowd. The mood in the hangar shifted greatly. All of the nervous energy and anticipation in the room had been converted into fear, stress, and worry. It seemed most people quickly realized that there wasn't enough time to call for help, and that a rescue ship was out of the question. There was a lot of murmuring in the crowd, and a few shocked voices. John cut into all the conversation now happening in the crowd and continued. "However, we already have an evacuation plan. There is an old ship off in the desert on the outskirts of the base here. Our base and the people currently on it are more than capable of getting the ship operational in the time we have," John continued. "As my last statement implied, there isn't enough room in the ships we have on site to get everyone out of here, nor is there enough time for help to arrive if we send out a message. Currently, this is our best option to get everyone off of the planet in time," John stated. The crowd had calmed down a lot now. Everyone seemed at ease that a plan was already in action. There were, however, still a handful of angry people in the crowd. Justin could hear them yelling at John. "Why hide it from us?" yelled one worker. "What is wrong with you people?" yelled another. Justin could easily tell they were obviously angry they weren't told about the CME earlier. "I can hear the complaints of a few of you, and I understand your frustration. We held off until now because we didn't want people to panic, and because we wanted a fully fleshed out plan in place. A panic could put us in serious danger," John responded to the complaints, keeping his cool. A few angry people in the crowd understood and calmed down. However, many did not. That was to be expected, however. Pleasing everyone is often impossible. "Anyone who has any mechanical knowledge, I need you to make your way over to the ship shortly. It is located to the west of the construction and fabrication warehouse, down in a valley. It is not far from here. Everyone else, you are to remain on standby to await further instructions. We will need your help in some other way," John instructed the crowd. "That concludes my speech. The other members of the Solfilius Council are here. They will be helping me to answer any questions you have. However, we do not have much time before we need to get moving. We cannot afford to waste a second, John informed the crowd. John began to lower the scissor lift down to the ground again. He then got out. In the distance, Justin could see a crowd of people swarming the Solfilius council. The council members looked like they were frantically trying to answer the questions of the desperate people. Justin couldn't help but feel a little sorry for them. Justin, Abigail, you will need to wait here for a while so the other council members and I can get as many questions answered as possible. After that, we will be headed over to the ship to get started on a strategy with all our mechanically experienced workers. Justin, since you are the logistics expert, I will be putting you in charge of getting all of the parts and materials to the ship. Abigail, if you believe you can handle it, I will make you head engineer. However, if not, I will give the position to Victor from the council instead. Although Victor has the advantage in terms of leadership skills, you, Abigail, have a significant advantage in engineering knowledge, John informed the pair. Justin had no complaints. He figured that although the logistics job would be very stressful, it would be the best use of his abilities. In some ways, this job was similar to his job in the orbital gateway. The orbital gateway. Justin began to think about all the people on board. Justin was the overseer of all operations on board. He worked with 5 other people. He had been working there for quite some time now. He had gotten to know his co-workers quite well. He hoped they would be okay. The gateway had a ship in case something happened on board, and they needed to evacuate for any reason. The ship was an Archeo. Archeos are a small specialized ship, primarily used for evacuations from space stations or larger ships. They do not have a warp drive, and are only designed for basic planetary transfers, or for landing from a planet's orbit. Randy, his co-overseer, would be handling everything on board, including the evacuation. Justin had a lot of trust in his abilities. Justin's mind jumped back to what John had just said. Justin began to think about Abigail's new potential role. He wondered if offering such a role to Abigail was such a good idea. Abigail, although an incredible engineer, could very easily crack under the pressure of this job. Justin once again trusted John's judgment on this, however. John had known her for longer, after all. Justin saw John forcing his way through the sea of people. Slowly, he made his way into the question circle with the other council members. He began to speak, but Justin couldn't make out what he was saying. As soon as John got into the question circle, the circle became less chaotic and a little more uniform. Justin assumed John had said something to calm everyone. Justin had dealt with his fair share of stressed and upset people, and he knew from experience calming someone down that quickly was no easy task. Justin looked over at Abigail. She still looked overwhelmed. He could tell by her fidgeting and facial expressions. It was clear she did not want to spend another second here. He wished that he could help out, but he didn't know how to. She would just have to wait it out. After a while, the crowd began to dissipate and move out of the hangar and into their cars. John and the council had managed to get through most of their questions within a short period of time. John returned to Justin and Abigail after he had finished addressing the crowd. They walked outside alongside everyone else. After they equipped their rebreathers and walked out of the airlock, they were met by a blast of cold air. It was getting frigid outside. The trio walked over to their car quickly to seek shelter. They clambered inside to get out of the cold. The dashboard in the car displayed a variety of information. One of the many things it displayed was the outside temperature. It was currently sitting at a brisk 5 degrees Celsius. John started the engine and took off into the night. Justin noticed that Abigail had calmed down and wasn't so stressed now. Because of this, Justin felt better. John was maintaining his composure impressively well. From the outside, it looked like nothing got to him. Justin was confident that wasn't the case, however, and that deep down he was just as stressed as everyone else. John pulled up next to the ship. Everyone got out of the car. Now, it was time to organise the workers and get started on repairs.